Hello everybody, in this video I am going to review and compare TubroGrafx-16 and PC Engine controllers. A quick disclaimer is that many people are having different experiences with the new third-party controllers for PC Engine and TubroGrafx-16. These are just my experiences and what I've had happen to me as I speedrun and play games casually on the PC Engine, so your mileage may vary. Let's get into it. So the controllers in this video are going to be the Hori Fighting Commander, this is the PC Engine version, the old school controller pad, and also the HyperKim Specialist. The old school and the Hyperkin are $29.99. The Hori Fighting Commander I picked up for $70 off of eBay. This is all US prices. These two were brand new, the old school and the Hyperkin. And the Hori Fighting Commander obviously is decades old because it's been out for a very long time when the console originally came out. This is my original core graphics controller, and I'm still able to use this one, but this is the one that came with the console that I also use today. So you'll notice the look of the Hori Fighting Commander PC is way different than basically any other controller I've ever seen on the PC Engine. First off, the D-pad actually has solid directions as opposed to the circular one that came on the actual console controller. It does have the included turbo switches, but it also has 6 buttons, and this is great if you want to play Street Fighter 2 or some other games. There is a 2-button and a 6-button mode because when you actually use this controller, certain games that don't support it, the controller is basically unusable in 6-button mode, so you actually have to switch it over to the 6-button and 2-button mode. Also has a slow switch, which on my controller specifically has had a little bit of malfunctioning, and I'm not 100% sure why. I've done some cleaning with this and some testing, and not every once in a while the slow kicks in by itself, and there's obviously some sort of connection issue going on that I still haven't been able to fix. But you'll also notice that how circular it is around. As far as the feel goes for the Fighting Commander, it's a little bit different. You'll notice, if I compare it to the original console controller, it's actually just slightly wider, and while it doesn't look that much difference, when you actually put the controller in your hand, it feels a lot different with these buttons just slightly farther over than the 1 and 2 buttons on the original controller. And when you're playing games casually, or if you're speedrunning games, that actual difference it just feels kind of weird. It's tough to describe. One of the things I really do like about the Fighting Commander, besides the 6 buttons, because the 6 buttons are very nice, but the D-pad just feels really nice. It's actually, I would say when you're speedrunning games, it's a lot easier to execute some really specific strats using this D-pad compared to the other one. The turbo switches are not in the easiest place to reach if you are playing a game where you have to switch between them quickly. The speedrun for Bonk's Adventure requires a lot of turning on the 1 and 2 turbo switches, and it's not the easiest thing to reach over here with your thumb to get over to here. But besides that, this is a really great controller that feels really nice, and I've had a lot of good luck with it up until recently where the slow switch and button have kind of kicked in and started to create some issues for me. The cable for the Hori Fighting Commander is just about the same as an original PC Engine or TubroGrafx-16 controller, just about 3 feet. So if you're looking for something with a little bit more length, the Fighting Commander might not be your controller. So the old school controller pad basically looks and feels like an original TubroGrafx-16 controller. It has the same indents that came on the original TubroGrafx-16. The dimensions are almost identical to the original TubroGrafx-16. The turbo switches look and feel like the original TubroGrafx-16 controller. One thing I will say that is a big difference right away is because the controller is newer, the 1 and 2 buttons aren't nearly as squishy as they are on the original TubroGrafx-16 controller. The select and run button have a little bit more travel than they do on the original controller that I can remember, especially compared to my PC Engine controller, which, you know, depending on how you play a game, isn't that big of a deal breaker, but they do feel different. It's really nice having non-squishy buttons on your 1 and 2. Whether you're playing casually or if you're doing a speed run or something like that, it's really nice having some responsive 1 and 2 buttons. The D-pad feels almost identical to the TubroGrafx-16 and the PC Engine, except for the fact that it's a little less squishy because it is newer. Some issues I have had with the old school controller. Number 1, this is the first version that ever came out, and it is not compatible with the Turbo Tap. So if you're playing a game like Bomberman where you want to play with more than one player, this version of it is not compatible with the Turbo Tap. They have done a revised version, And this is the revised version here, and I have been able to test, and it does work with the turbo pad. If you buy the newest version of the controller, you should be getting the updated version, and especially if you're buying it from Castlemania Games or another reputable retro game store. I will say that the D-pad burned out pretty quickly. What I mean by that is that the responsiveness I was getting originally when I first bought the controller changed over time. Especially as a speedrunner who's playing 8 to 10 hours a week, I noticed that the D-pad was no longer responding the way it originally did. I was dropping some inputs, and I was actually experiencing some dead zones that I wasn't experiencing when I first got the controller. Opened it up, did some cleaning, that fixed it temporarily, but then I was seeing the same problem happen again. The performance of the controller really started to go south after about 6 months in with it. Another thing that I really liked about this controller is that it comes with an adapter. So it's actually set up out of the box to play on a TubroGrafx-16, but it does have a TubroGrafx-16 to PC Engine converter, and that's really cool that it's included in the box for that price, and it works great. I was able to plug it in and it worked right away. If I was playing a game off of the SSDS3 or off of an EverDrive, occasionally there would be some weird glitches where it would stop my game. The game would just literally freeze up. I tried this happened to me a couple times, and then I replaced the controller and played the game as if it was normal and everything was fine. I'm not sure if that's a product of the controller or just my experience, but it did happen with multiple games. I remember with having Fushigi no Yumi no Alice, and also Bonk's Revenge, I believe, was the other one that it happened on. So just kind of be aware of that. One last thing about the old school controllers is that the cable is just as long as it is on the original TurboGrafx-16 controller. So it's pretty short. It's only about 3 feet. Just be aware of that if you're looking for something with a little bit more length. And this is the HyperKim Specialist. I've only had this controller for a few weeks, so take all of this with a grain of salt, but it looks and feels quite different than some of the other controllers I've played through. It has some indentations on the back here that at first is a bit jarring because it doesn't feel like any other PC Engine controller. However, it's pretty comfortable. I actually don't mind it. There's some indentations here on the sides as well. And for the way that I play games and the way I hold a controller, it actually was quite comfortable. I didn't really notice any big difference. The buttons and the D-pad are all quite responsive and have some really nice rebound in them. The select and run buttons feel a little bit squishy. They're quite squishy, so if that's something that's a little bit concerning to you, just realize compared to the original PC Engine controller, the buttons are a bit squishy on the select and run button. It does have the same style D-pad as the original PC Engine controller, but it's quite responsive, and it's got some really nice travel into it. It really feels good in the fingers. I would say there's two things that really set this thing apart that make it pretty nice. One of the biggest differences between this controller and all the others is by far the cable. It's a little bit over 10 feet, and it's really awesome if you need some extra space, especially if this is plugged into your living room setup or anything like that. This cable is awesome for that. On top of that, just like the old school controller, it does come with the adapter. Out of the box, it's set for TurboGrafx-16, but so far I have had no issues on any PC Engine games using the SDS3 or the EverDrive playing this thing. If you're going to spend $29.99 on a new controller, I would personally prefer this one to the old school controller just for the cable alone. Having that extra feet of space is really nice, especially considering modern setups nowadays. Really like this controller a lot and really like the features that it comes with, even though it feels slightly different than original hardware. If you're a fan of the PC Engine and TurboGrafx-16, you know that finding original controllers can be really challenging. It's expensive, the controller may not work, some of this hardware is 30 years old. The nice thing is we have some option with new controllers. None of these options are perfect. If you've had some experiences with these controllers, let me know in the comments below. Or maybe there's some third-party options that I haven't experienced yet. Let me know about that as well. If you're interested in any sort of PC Engine and TurboGrafx-16 stuff, stop by the Discord. We have a great TurboGrafx-16 Discord community. There's a link in the description below. Stop on by and we can chat. Thanks for watching.